The Green Arrow is a character that has gone through a lot of transformations. In the main DC Comics continuity, he's largely depicted as a character that has an easygoing attitude compared to the rest of the heroes in the Justice League. In the series written by Mike Grell, Oliver Queen had a lot of gritty and grounded obstacles to overcome. And as we all know, in the Arrow TV show, Green Arrow was characterized much like Batman. But what has remained consistent is the fact that the Green Arrow has always been a redemptive hero. This got me thinking, why does the Green Arrow have such a great redemption arc? In this video, I'm going to answer said question, and hopefully after watching this video, you'll have all of the tools you need to develop a redemptive hero of your own. But before we move on, please be sure to like and subscribe to Reverb Comics. You do not want to miss out on our awesome content. Before we get into why the Green Arrow is a near perfect redemptive hero, I'm going to give you a brief rundown on the character's comic book history. The Green Arrow and Speedy first appeared in More Fun Comics issue number 73 in November 1941. Oliver Queen's personality and origin story went through a couple of different reimaginations. In the Golden Age of comics, Oliver Queen was an archaeologist who studied Native American culture. He had a museum that got burned down by criminals during an attempted robbery. He traveled to the Lost Mesa as a means to get away from everything and to find treasure. It's here where he comes across Roy Harper for the first time. The kid's parents died in a plane crash and he hunted to survive on the island. Criminals followed Oliver to acquire the rumored treasure, and Oliver Queen and Roy Harper beat the thugs with bow and arrows. The discovery of the treasure made the two very wealthy. Hence, they used the money to finance their crime-fighting careers. Oliver Queen's origin story was completely revamped in the Silver Age of comics. Fun fact, Jack Kirby, the creative pioneer for Marvel Comics, came up with the Green Arrow's most famous origin story. Oliver Queen was a wealthy playboy who got stranded on a desert island after his cruise ship crashed. Seeing that he could no longer buy his way out of this situation, he did everything he could to survive. He made several makeshift bow and arrows to hunt and defend himself from predators. After surviving on the island for several months, he caught the attention of a freight ship passing by and managed to get a safe passage home. After returning home, Oliver Queen vowed to leave his selfish ways behind him and fight the injustices that plagued Star City. Over the years, Oliver Queen went through several personality changes. Like most characters in the Golden Age, Oliver Queen had a fun and easygoing outlook on life. It was not until 1969 where the character's personality got totally revamped. Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil remade the character into a man who lost his fortune. He was an advocate for the disenfranchised and the political left wing. In this series, Oliver was paired up with the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. Both characters had very different socio-economic and political viewpoints. Oliver Queen took an individualistic stance and often spoke for radical change, whereas Hal Jordan often wanted to work for existing institutions like the government and the Green Lantern Corps. Together, the two would travel across America and tackle a variety of real-world problems like corruption, pollution, and drug addiction. It was not until 1987 that the Green Arrow character got totally reimagined by the creative genius Mike Grell. In my opinion, this is one of the best comic book series I've ever read. Despite the fact that Oliver Queen is not depicted as a character with a dark and brooding personality, he did do a lot of questionable things. For example, when a group of drug runners kidnapped and beat Black Canary, Ollie killed the man who brutally tortured her. This series was very different from the Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil's take on the character. Both men used the Green Arrow to comment on a variety of socio-economic issues in the real world. Mike Grell, on the other hand, did not really politicize his comic book series. Instead, he had the Green Arrow and Black Canary isolated from the rest of the DC Comics universe and deal with very real, gritty, and violent characters. For example, instead of dealing with costume vigilantes like Count Vertigo, the Green Arrow fought a violent PTSD-ridden soldier who was once a tunnel rat in Vietnam. After the series ended, Oliver Queen had a reputation for doing some questionable things in the comics. For example, Hal Jordan went mad after Coast City got destroyed. This drove him to destroy the Green Lantern Corps and gain the power to remake the universe. Oliver Queen killed his old friend in an effort to stop this from happening. He also killed the supervillain Prometheus for destroying Star City. This cost the life of Leanne Harper, Roy Harper's daughter. Oliver Queen went on to hunt down all of the villains associated with Prometheus before turning himself in for his crimes. And writers for Green Arrow continued to advocate for the disenfranchised. He took on Mia Dearden, the new Speedy, as a sidekick. She was one of the first comic book characters to appear as a HIV-positive teenager. In the New 52 and Rebirth continuity, the creative teams often alluded to Oliver Queen's left-leaning viewpoints and dark temperament, but did not push the character to extremes like he was in the past. He often fought a mixture of supervillains like Count Vertigo, the Clock King, Brick, and other grounded, non-superpowered threats like Eddie Fryers. Now that we know who the character is, let's use the Green Arrow as an example on how to build a redemption arc. Number 1, build a foundation. Like all great redemption arcs, your character needs to start in a not-so-perfect place. In most versions of his origin story, Oliver Queen was a selfish, wealthy playboy who had no real concern for other people's well-being. In the Arrow TV show, Oliver was a rich kid who faced no real consequences for his actions. His parents basically paid his way into a ton of Ivy League schools, and whenever he ran into trouble with the law, he'd get bailed out in an instant. This guy thought he can get away with anything. He cheated on his girlfriend Laurel Lance with her sister Sarah. In the Green Arrow Year 1 graphic novel written by Andrew Diggle, Ollie was a rich playboy who drank a bit too much. He often did really reckless things to find meaning in the hollow existence of luxury. Once the foundation is built for your character, present a catalyst. In my opinion, having Oliver Queen stranded on an island is the perfect catalyst for the character. Why? Because the remote island is one of the only places where he cannot buy his way out of his situation. The island is the first place in Ollie's life where he experiences consequences for his actions and has to make tough choices. While stranded with no access to food or shelter, he realizes how hard you have to work to not only have nice things, but to survive. For Ollie, this is the perfect catalyst for change as it gives him a completely different outlook on life. Keep in mind that the foundations that you built for the character and the catalyst for change must complement one another. For example, Sokka went through a small redemption arc in Avatar: The Last Airbender. He started out as a guy who had a bit of a sexist attitude towards women.
I knew I should have left you home. Leave it to a girl to screw things up.
Later on in the series, he came across a lot of warriors who happened to be women. To make a long story short, he got beaten by them, gained some humility, trained with them, and lost his sexist attitude. Now, if a sexist character like Sokka got stranded on an island, sure, he'd probably gain some humility, but I doubt that the character would lose the sexist attitude. Hence, make sure that the catalyst for change complements the foundations that you built for the character. Otherwise, you'll have a redemption arc with a choppy narrative and a messy storyline. Number 3, make sure they make mistakes. When a character goes through radical change, they often struggle along the way. Redemption arcs work best when the character has some problems committing to change. Ollie is no exception. While yes, he did gain a new outlook when it came to empathizing with people in need, his idea of helping people was not perfect. For example, in the Arrow TV show, Ollie started out as a killer. When he returned home after his 5 years on the island, he started out killing white-collar criminals who did not face any consequences for their misdeeds. Eventually, he moved on to killing other types of violent criminals. He kept on doing this until he came to a realization. He stopped killing people after realizing that he was creating a big cycle of violence. He also did it to honor his best friend Tommy, who had big objections to his killing policy. In the comics, similar things happened for Ollie. For example, in the Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil series, Ollie neglected his sidekick Roy Harper. Roy got addicted to heroin as a consequence of the trauma he went through and the lack of parental figures he had in his life. Even though the Green Arrow was out fighting the good fight, he failed to show support to Roy Harper. And like I mentioned before, Ollie did some questionable things. He got pretty extreme at times. He got a bit extreme when he killed a couple of villains. The Identity Crisis story arc was a whole new level of disturbing. I'm not going to get into that story, but all I have to say is that the Green Arrow and a bunch of other DC Comics superheroes did some questionable things. Very, very morally gray things. The point is, if you want to make your redemption arc grounded and believable, make sure your character makes some mistakes along the way. After all, progression is rarely ever a straight line. Number 4, get the motivation right. When writing the redemption arc, your character needs a strong conviction to change. Oftentimes, when a character tries to redeem themselves, it's pretty difficult as a lot of people have a right to not trust them. In order to go through the redemption journey, your character needs a strong motivation. In the Arrow TV show, Ollie had a pretty strong motivation to get through the hard times. His dad, the guy who always believed in him and never gave up on him, told Ollie to right his wrongs and do whatever it takes to survive. In the comics, Ollie had pretty similar motivations. After realizing the error of his ways, he was motivated to change the Queen legacy for the better. In the early years, Queen Industries made most of his profit from selling weapons and munitions. I know, it sounds pretty familiar to another billion-dollar company in a superhero franchise. After realizing this, Ollie sold his company and gave all of the proceeds to fund a war relief effort. And number 5, have that full circle moment. In order to bring your redemption arc to a close, you need your character to do something selfless. Oliver Queen died a hero in the comics when a group of eco-terrorists planned on causing an explosion in Metropolis. And in the Arrowverse, Ollie died saving billions of people in an alternate universe from parademons. He quickly came back from the dead and became the spirit of justice known as the Spectre. And of course, he quickly had another big selfless moment after he stopped the Anti-Monitor from destroying the multiverse. Of course, he died again in the process, then he came back again when one of the Flash's villains, Bloodwork, tried to turn everyone into zombies. Anyways, the point is, for your redemption arc to come to a close, you need your character to perform an action that shows that he or she has changed. Keep in mind that you do not want your character to do a full 180. In other words, try not to make your character change too much. So for example, while Oliver Queen was on his path to redemption, he oftentimes struggled when it came to losing his prideful attitude. This makes sense because the guy was a wealthy playboy at one point in his life. The point I'm trying to make is that it's not that believable to have a character go from an arrogant jerk to a full-blown Mother Teresa. Anyways, that's more or less how you can create a redemption arc. Keep in mind that it's best to have all of these elements complement one another in your narrative, otherwise you'll run into some messy storytelling. I'm super happy that I got a chance to work on this character. Green Arrow has always been a fan favorite character of mine, and I'm happy he's been growing in popularity over these past couple of years. But what do you think? Do you think that Oliver Queen is a great redemptive hero? What do you think you need to create a great redemption arc? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe to Reverb Comics so that you do not miss out on our awesome content. Stay groovy.